Hi everyone, I just share my screen. So we have an idea. I can give you an idea where you are right now. And mentoring to work. I don't know if everybody knows that concept, but we will explain you in a few minutes. And mentoring to work helps to bridge the gap for adult newcomers to the labor market. This workshop will be presented by myself. My name is Valérie, and I work for an organization which is called Hefboom in Brussels. And Carina is my co-presenter, actually the head presenter, I would say. And she's working for an organization which is called LAMSA in Germany, but I'm sure she will explain much more about that. And I will admit someone else, voila. I don't know how this works with all those codes, but if you need a code for the mentoring organization program, whatever bar, here are two codes. You might want to copy them. I don't know if it's necessary for you, but if you want, I just leave them here for a few seconds. Voilà. If you need them at the end and you were not able to write it down right now, we can go back at the end to this slide. I suppose you also will receive the slides, so I will skip this summary because you will have the whole presentation, of course. And maybe it's good to have some idea. At the end of the day, I suppose, maybe you had already a lot of workshops and lectures and whatever. So it might be good to know what's coming to bridge this hour. So first of all, of course, welcome. And we will have a few minutes, 10 minutes, a quarter, to also learn who's here in this room and what brings you here. We will talk a little bit about Memori, and Memori was a mentoring, a transnational project on mentoring to work. And actually the main question of it was a quite huge program, I think. Our main question was, how can mentoring to work build a bridge towards sustainable employment and social inclusion for adult newcomers? Like all these huge words. Actually, it might be good to have a little bit of context. So as you remember, probably our project started in kind of the aftermath of the influx of asylum seekers in the EU in the period 2015-2016. You know, there was this war in Syria. There was also a little bit instability in the Near and Middle East. And what we saw is that quite a lot of asylum seekers came to amongst others, Western Europe. And what we saw was really interesting. There were not only high qualified refugees, but there were also quite a lot of lower qualified refugees. And it's good to keep this a little bit in mind, because at the time there were quite a lot of programs and developing for higher qualified people, but not so many things were developed at the time for lower qualified people. So we knew also, and you see some research references, and most of them are from our good friend Peter de Kuiper. He and his colleagues said, okay, we've done some research, and what do we see is that, and it's kind of obvious, we know that, right? That labor market integration is one of the key success factors for integration in our society. But, and that was interesting, he studied also already mentoring before we started our program. And he saw by studying all those mentoring programs that actually, or even traditional integration instruments, that they were not so effective because they focus on economic capital and building economic capital. And he said, maybe it's good to have more attention for also like social capital, culture capital, psychological capital, and information capital. And he saw one of the answers, he thought, this is relevant, was actually mentoring to work, which puts much more attention not only on the economic capital and helping people towards the labor market, but especially on all those social, cultural, and other kinds of capital. So Memori was a project we started, I think, in 2016. We prepared 2017, it officially started. And it was a program in which we wanted to develop several actually effective and sustainable mentoring models, mentoring to work models for the integration of refugees into the European labor markets. And a lot of things happened there. So we will only focus actually, I've been working for the Belgium, you see this orange circle on top, for the Belgium partner. And we were also coordinating as Hefboom. So that's why I'm here, and that's why there is this orange circle, but there's also another orange circle. And actually, so this is the program, Mimoga, that we will present here. The other programs were also about mentoring to work. One was more in the context of school. What's the program of Finland, for example? We had also in Germany another project that was much more focused on policy and policy actors and how to integrate mentoring in policy, for example. But all the stuff, all the results, and we have quite a lot of publications. You can all find on our website, which is www.memori.be. Voila. So I give now the words at my colleague Carina, and she will present you the results and recommendations from their mentoring to work program.
Hello to you all, and I'm very happy to present our findings, our results and recommendations from our mentoring project in Germany. So I would like to start with a little bit of background. We did the project from July 2017 to March 2020 as part of the Transnational Memory Network. We're supported by national ESF funding. Our organizational background is LAMSA is a regional network of migrant organizations in the federal state of Saxony-Anhalt. It's in the eastern part of Germany. Our starting point was the observation that the job placement of state agencies for refugees works better or faster in a way if the refugees or newcomers can offer academic degrees or educational certificates, for example, as medical doctors. But if they lack certificates for schooling or vocational training, it is difficult to find a suitable job. Thus, they are considered as unskilled workers. So our aim was developing effective and sustainable and transferable mentoring elements to support adult refugees without formal qualifications and undocumented educational qualifications in their search for employment and to support them to place them into employment. So we work with the mentoring definition that was developed by our colleagues De Kuipers, Van der Meerschen and Pukayasta in 2019. Mentoring is defined as a person with more localized experience provides guidance to a person with less experience, the objective of which is to support the mentee in making sustainable progress in their journey into the labor market. Both mentor and mentee voluntarily commit to this and establish contact on a regular basis. The relationship is initiated, facilitated, and supported by a third actor. While asymmetrical, the mentoring relationship is of a reciprocal nature. Now something about the mentees in the project. We did initial interviews with 22 persons according to a questionnaire. There were 18 men and 4 women, 70% from Syria, others from Iran, Niger, Benin and Russia, mainly with a residence permission as refugees. And they all had, or almost all of them had access to language courses or job placement support from the state agencies. Many of them were younger than 40, as you can see in this figure, and some of them had never been to school, but we also had refugees with academic degrees. In their home countries, some of them were self-employed, managed companies successfully over a long period of time, even without schooling or training certificates. The academics often lacked working experiences or had to face dropouts so that they couldn't finish their education. Some of them had degrees that do not exactly fit into professions according to the German education system, and so their certificates could not be recognized or just on a lower level. We worked with a mentoring model where we divided between the professional level and the voluntary level. So on the professional level, there are offers for language training and the support of the employment services and additional counseling they can reach as refugees when they have a permission to stay, for example. But as we can see in the practice, that if the refugees cannot offer certificates to prove their skills, their employment, their placement into employment was not very successful. That means they stay unemployed or just can find less paid or very insecure jobs with no long-term perspectives or without perspectives on improving their skills. So we think on the voluntary level, the mentors are there as volunteers, and they have working experiences, and they can support with the knowledge, give information and access to local networks, and are the individual supporters of the mentee. So now some insights into the practice of our pilot phase. During this 1 year, we did this pilot phase. We matched 10 tandems that were together for different periods of time. Our main challenge was that we had less possible mentors than refugees that wanted to be a part of the project. At the first meeting, we defined the goals with mentor and mentee, for example, language improvement as part of the preparation for the labor market, finding a place for vocational training or a suitable job, or open up a shop. The project team gave them support, frequent information, and organized the monitoring during the whole duration of the tandem together. And the planned period of time for the mentoring was around 6 months, but in practice, the duration differed when the goals were reached earlier, for example, or if it took longer to reach them. And close to the end of this pilot phase, we did an evaluation of the mentoring processes of the 10 tandems with a questionnaire. Yes, and now I would like to present some results, what we learned from this questionnaire and our small evaluation of this mentors and mentees. So we found out that many changes have been made during this time. For example, the language skills. The mentees were able to improve their oral communication skills. They got more practice in German language, but they also say that improving their reading or writing abilities takes longer than this period of time. Information. They say that they have more knowledge about their local environment, the functioning of institutions, job market, how it works, and, for example, how to use search engines for job search. So they tried it out together with the mentor, and now they feel more skilled to do it on their own. Self-confidence, they became more confident in speaking and acting, and more courageous if they had to talk to other people. Then motivation. They are stimulated to make individual decisions of planning of life. They can express their ideas and aims more openly and can talk about their needs more clearly, also what they don't want. If you look at the networks, there was no significant transfer of direct relations to members of the mentors network, for example, or to possible employers or companies. It was like this, that their networks, their relationship was focused on this one-to-one relationship between the mentor and the mentee. And they relied mainly on the mediation of the mentor, for example, when they wanted to reach employers. Now some results of the pilot phase as kind of conclusion. We see that mentoring can support the preparation for work and the job search in a complementary and individual way. So we see there's an empowering effect of mentoring. On the individual level, a lot has happened in the tandem, not just directly towards job placement, but in the surrounding and preparation of the way to the labor market. The trust building processes can be long and need time. Supporting refugees with difficult starting conditions needs stamina and flexibility. So it's not so easy to reach the goal they defined. It takes longer than they estimated in advance, for example, and we as well, of course. In fact, there is a high distance of everyday living of the mentors and the mentees to be overcome. So they are not from one day to the other very close to each other, because they first have to get into this trust building process. And the intercultural understanding is relevant on both sides, and also in the connection with the local environment. I think I can skip this, so we can look at this later because we need time to discuss. There are just some statements of the person, and afterwards you will see the presentation. Maybe you can get more deeper insight what they say on their own, because now I would like to just add some recommendations so that we can have a basis to discuss afterwards together. So we see that there should be a flexible, tailored mentoring that is related to the individual starting situations of refugees and their aims. The refugees should know what mentoring can contribute and what are the limitations. And also there should be clear tasks for the mentors to avoid overburdening their voluntary activities. In the same time, voluntariness on both sides is important for the relationship, but there should be binding arrangements on cooperation. The mentees are responsible for their decisions, the mentors are their supporters. So it's necessary to avoid paternalistic strategies and to maintain the mentees' independence. And also, if in a project that tries to support refugees with difficult starting conditions, it's necessary to have enough resources in the project team, money and skills in the staff, for example, for different mentoring durations and different goals according to the needs of the refugees. Because if the refugees cannot offer formal qualification, quick success cannot be expected. Yes, and the intercultural opening of institutions and companies is important and should be part of the project, or at least one goal of a broader network of actors in which the project cooperates. And finally, it could be helpful to have additional offers to increase encounter and mutual intercultural learning. For example, promote volunteering by migrants so that they get more knowledge, more practical learning from the local environment society. Yes, and that's it for the start. So just, yeah, I hope I could give some insight into our experiences. And you can find more information on our websites in German and English language. And yes, now maybe it's a good starting point. I hope so, that I could give some information or maybe some insights what we can go on in our discussion.
Thank you, Carina. So we have 3 questions for you before you put you in a breakout room. And these are, I added some visuals so we can remember them when we're in those rooms. So maybe the first question, what do you take away What are your takeaways? But a second question is also, what can you contribute from your experiences? You probably have some or a lot of experiences yourself with mentoring, maybe not specifically mentoring to work, but that's okay. What can you contribute to this conversation? And you will take more or less a quarter for that, and we let you organize this quarter totally by yourself in the breakout room. And the last question we give you is to kind of enhance some conversation and kind of in-depth discussion maybe. What are the additional questions or reflections you have? So what are the additional questions that need to be discussed? But also what kind of additional reflections you have. And you can take more or less 10 minutes for that in the breakout rooms. So here you go. So welcome back. So, but we are very curious about your questions, reflections, things to work on in the future maybe, or you want to work on in the future. So.
Yes, I think the qualification of newcomers without certificates and proved skills is a big challenge, because on the one hand they have practical experiences, but they are not visible. Yeah. For example, the adult person in the age of 30, they started working when they were 15, and they have a working experience of 15 years or sometimes more, and they opened up shops and they have practical experience, but it's so difficult to prove it. And I think they need more practical possibilities to show what they can contribute. But there's this lack that for example, in Germany, we have this certificating system. So there are some groups of professions and skills related to these professions, and they do not match with their broader experiences of life and different skills they have collected in their home country.
Yeah, and relating to the mentoring training, I didn't give training myself, but I did look at several programs. Actually, not super in depth, but we did look at what do they do in training. And a lot of the things, well, actually there are, let's say, 2 or 3 main parts, you could say. There's a lot of the mentoring to work programs that train mentors. They have a part that's related to stereotypes, discrimination, how to deal with that, you know, how to look at your own how do you think yourself about people, how you know your own prejudices actually, and do some research on that. But also, how do you have like more like open conversations, you know, without judgments in it. So that's often a part of it. But also coaching people how to deal with prejudices and stereotypes of employers, for example. How do you deal with that? So there are some mentoring programs that focus on that, and that's one element in training. Then there's this whole part of how does the labor market in this country, let's say Belgium or Flanders, how does it work, and what are the like all the formal organizations, like the Public Employment Agency, how does it work, all that kind of stuff, how do you get a job? It can be through these employment agencies, but also like the more informal network, and that's of course all what's mentoring about, this informal relations. How do you write your CV, or are there other ways of presenting yourself, you know? In some sectors, it's not that much about presenting your CV. It's more about showing what you can do. So all these differences are kind of covered, or they try to do that. And you see also that these mentoring programs, they develop their training, of course, as well, because of the feedback they receive back. So that I think that are main parts in trainings.
Maybe I can add something from our perspective, so that we also could see that the mentors changed a lot. Yeah, that was not time to get more into this detail, but they also recognized their prejudices, that they never knew what Syrian men had living, yeah, and earning something, and had a career before he came here. And it was very astonishing, this reflection, yeah, strategies they had then, what they observed with themselves. And maybe it's a good idea, of course, because the environment is very important, how the environment is yeah, looking at the refugees, especially in smaller cities where the population, foreign population, is very low. But the companies are looking for people. Yeah, they have jobs, but they want them to fit 100% into this job, and they are not willing to give up this idea that if I look for somebody, he should fit 100%. And if we have a refugee, so maybe he needs support with language, or we do not know if there's a misunderstanding. Is he eating pork or not? Or does he had to pray, or many prejudice? Yeah, can he adapt to us? But on the other way around, if they do not get more open, they will not find workers. Yeah, one day. So in this region where we have this project, this pilot phase, there's a lack of young persons. Yeah, younger than 40, because many of them are. It's an overaged, yeah, population, where they have a lot of retired persons and not working force in a way. And the refugees can contribute. But on the other side, the companies are not open enough to consider this as chance. Yeah, because they are not so, we have not this big companies, they are small, they have a lot of pressure, or they say that they cannot adapt, or they just want this one-way integration, yeah, as we know it. Yeah, the refugees, newcomers coming, we have a society that's fixed, and they have to adapt. Yeah, and the other way around is not in the mind of the companies or the environment, and that's maybe, yeah, a big struggle, I think, we have to do.
Okay, lovely people. We have only 2 more minutes, I think. I think there's another session, so we can't go on like yesterday evening. So I have the impression that it might be nice to, I don't know, to share even contact details, you know, to have further discussions or whatever, collaborations. But maybe you can share it in the chat. That's easy. Then you just have them all together, and once you don't have to. So it might be a good time to finish this session, and you can have a small break for the next session. And I wish you, I don't know, a lovely week, and maybe we see each other this evening. So, bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.